The sports world continues to be in a standstill, but the Blue Bloods return to keep the college football world moving. We start the episode off by discussing whether Jim Harbaugh is on the hot seat for the 2020 season and what he needs to do in this upcoming season to keep Michigan fans happy. We then discuss what team is our 2020 dark horse team for the national championship, and then we debate which player next season could be the next Joe Burrow and shock the world. We wrap up the episode talking about the huge decision Trey Sermon made to transfer from Oklahoma and whether the team he picked is now the odds-on favorite to win it all in 2020. We know you guys need the sports talk, and we're here to give it to you, so let's kick it off. Jim Harbaugh. So Harbaugh will be entering his 6th season as the Michigan Wolverines head coach. In his first 5 years, Harbaugh's won almost 50 games and led the Wolverines to multiple New Year's Six Bowl appearances. The knock on Harbaugh's tenure, though, has been his lack of ability to beat Ohio State and other big rivals. The Wolverines are 0-5 against the Buckeyes, which makes Harbaugh the first Michigan coach to ever lose their first 5 games in the rivalry. Brandon, experts seem to be torn on where Harbaugh stands in the eyes of Michigan directors, executives. So, in your opinion, is Harbaugh on the hot seat? And if so, what does he need to do to keep his job in 2020? And if not, what does he need to do to keep himself off the hot seat?
All right. So, to start, I'm going to go ahead and ask you to define what the hot seat is. Because, does that mean, do I think that Jim Harbaugh will get fired from Michigan? Or does it mean that I think that, maybe there'll be like an outcry, like maybe Michigan fans want him out? I don't think he's going to get fired. So if that's what being on the hot seat is, then no, he's not on the hot seat. But what are you trying to say the hot seat is?
So hot seat, I think that there's levels of hot seat. I don't think he's Gus Malzahn hot seat right now or Clay Helton hot seat, but I think he's Gus Malzahn 2016 hot seat, where there's start rumblings that if he gets off to a bad start or goes 0-6 versus Ohio State, that the program should look into moving in another direction.
Look, and this is what I'll say. Under Jim Harbaugh, Michigan has consistently finished 10-3. Several times. Finished 9-4 this year. His worst season with them was in 2017, and he went 8-5. Now, that's not necessarily a bad year. Before that, you had Rich Rodriguez taking them to 3-9 seasons, and Brady Hoke taking them to 5-7, 7-6 seasons, losing in the Buffalo Wild Wings Bowl. Jim Harbaugh certainly isn't the greatest. He's up there, but he's not the greatest coach in college football by any means. And there are the knocks against him. Obviously, he can't beat Ohio State. That's one of the biggest things. The second biggest thing to me, and something that people often overlook, I think, out of his 5 bowl appearances with Michigan because he's made a bowl every year since he's been there. He's lost 4 of those. He's lost a Citrus Bowl, a Peach Bowl, an Outback Bowl, and an Orange Bowl. The only bowl game he won was in his first season in 2015. He won the Citrus Bowl. But other than that, he's not doing outstanding things, but I definitely don't think that he's getting fired from this program, because where is Michigan going to go besides Jim Harbaugh? Think about that. They can't go anywhere but down after this, unless they somehow pull out some kind of absurd hire, which they won't.
So, here's where I would have to step in and disagree with you. You're right that it'd be hard to go up, but in my opinion, I don't think Harbaugh is an elite coach. So check the tapes, guys. This is not a new opinion for me. Brandon about had a heart attack. I went back and looked. Episode 8 of the Blue Bloods. Go check it out. It was released on September 22nd, and I said that Jim Harbaugh was on the hot seat, and Brandon about had a stroke on air. But here's where it gets hairy for me, is that Harbaugh makes $7.5 million a year, which ranks 3rd in college football. He's only behind Dabo Swinney and Nick Saban, and I don't even think he's in the same class as those coaches. And I don't want to hear about, you can't put a value on his recruiting, because I think he's a overrated recruiter by a long by a long stretch. I mean, his
Nah.
average class finish at Michigan is 15th. That's not elite.
Okay, but
I mean, the Gus Malzahn's average is 7th, Brandon. And I don't think Gus Malzahn's an elite coach. Dabo Swinney's
no.
average is in the top 5. Nick Saban's average is in the top 5. James Franklin averages at Penn State a top 10 class. And Ryan Day's on verge of averaging a top 3 class right now and going into his second year. He has the number 1 class in the country next year. And the thing that gets me is that Michigan, I would say Michigan's up. It might not be a blue blood program, but they're right on the fringe, right? I think we can agree on that.
Yeah.
So, is there a reason for Michigan not to sign at least one top 100 prospect every year?
No, I mean, I suppose not. But I mean, I don't know. It's Jim Harbaugh. I mean, I don't know how you're arguing against me here.
Well, so let's look. I mean, he had no top 100 prospects in his 2020 class this past recruiting cycle or his 2018 class. His highest ranked class is 5th. And 16 of those signees left the program before they contributed significantly. Not great.
Okay,
and then go ahead.
The thing to me is that it's okay. I know I keep saying it. It's Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh is the reason that Stanford is the program they were. I mean, think about that. Before the late 2000s, what was Stanford? Stanford was the Ivy League of the West Coast. They weren't known for athletics, and all of a sudden they're consistently playing for the Pac-12 championship. I mean, obviously they've fallen since that, but I mean they were a great team for a long time. I mean, he coached there for what, 4 years until he went to San Francisco.
Yeah, but I mean, I think he had a lot more success at Stanford than he's had at Michigan. Relatively.
Okay, well, that doesn't. I don't know about that. He went 4-8, 5-7, 8-5, and 12-1 in his last season.
12-1 at Stanford is outrageous.
Well, yeah, I'm not discounting that at all. I mean, I just talked about how he's the reason that Stanford is what they are today. I would stand behind that. I think he definitely he did the groundwork for that program. And I mean, look at Michigan. I already read their numbers. And look what they were before he came there. I mean, look at what the 49ers were before he went there. And then look what they were under him. I mean, they made it to a Super Bowl.
I don't think you could judge.
He's a fantastic coach. He's a great coach.
I don't think he's top 10 in college football right now.
I don't know if I'd say he's top 10, but I mean, he's a coach that players love. Have you ever heard this man talk? It's amazing. Every time he talks, it makes me laugh.
I'd rather him not talk.
Have you ever heard him talk about how he used to drink milk because he thought it would make him grow taller? He used to just chug milk growing up because he thought it would make him grow taller. He won't eat chickens because he calls them a nervous bird.
Well, he might need to eat some chicken if he helps him beat Ohio State.
Oh, who says it makes him beat Ohio State? It's
exactly.
Michigan. I understand what you're saying. No one's ever gone 0-5. Okay. All right. I mean, I think that I'm not going to say that he's an underrated coach. I think he's fairly rated at Michigan. I don't think that he's overrated by any means.
You don't think he's overpaid?
I didn't say I didn't think he's overpaid. I think it's outrageous that any college football coach would get paid $7.5 million unless your name is Nick Saban.
No, Dabo Swinney makes more than Nick Saban, and he should.
Okay, as soon as Dabo Swinney matches rings with Nick Saban, then we'll talk.
He's coming. He's coming. Let's not play jokes here, Brandon.
Whenever that, I'm not making jokes. I'm serious. Whenever that happens, let me know.
So my thing with this Harbaugh thing, the thing that gets under my skin is there's always an excuse to bail him out. The accountability is never thrown on Jim Harbaugh, and that's what makes me mad about it. So the first excuse was he needed time. He needed time to get talent. He needed time to develop the program. Well, he's had that. That's no longer an excuse. So what did they move to? Well, he doesn't have a quarterback. He needs a quarterback. Well,
okay, but to be fair,
And then hang on. And then he says, well, I identified my guy. We got Shea Patterson. We're going to ride with Shea Patterson. Shea Patterson's the next legendary Michigan quarterback. It doesn't turn out, and everyone's like, oh, well, that's not necessarily on Jim Harbaugh, even though he calls himself the quarterback whisperer and he's one of the best offensive minds in college football. Well, then they said he needs a new refreshing take on the offense. He needs to get him a new young offensive coordinator. He goes and steals Josh Gaddis out of Alabama, right out of Nick Saban's hands. And the offense was, would you say abysmal is a good word for it this year, Brandon? Did you watch that Iowa-Michigan game this year?
Define abysmal, because we got the walking dictionary over here. I thought it was a football podcast, not a nerd podcast.
I don't think
book club.
It's his book club. It's a GRE word, but the thing, I think it's time to look directly at Harbaugh. You can't place this on Josh Gaddis and the offensive coordinator. You can't place this on Shea Patterson. You can't place this on Father Time and not having enough time to build the program. This is time to look directly at Jim Harbaugh. If he is the most overrated coach in college football, he's overpaid, overconfident, overhyped. He's not elite. Michigan should make a financial decision and let him walk. I think they'll be better for it. I think there's coaches that you can get at a much more reasonable bargain that can get you to go lose a Citrus Bowl every year.
Okay. He won. Okay, he's 500 on the Citrus Bowl. Let's not bring the Citrus Bowl into this.
He's 1-4 in bowl games, Brandon. 1-4 in bowl games. That's garbage. That is absolute. That is not worth $7.5 million a year.
I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying I don't think that. I don't. I think he's a great coach. I don't think he deserves $7.5 million. Like I said, I'll say it again. I don't think anyone deserves that money unless your name's Nick Saban. But if I don't think that he's done an awful job in Michigan. Do I think that he's lived up to what he should be doing in Michigan? Not necessarily. But do I think he's done a bad job? No.
Oh, a side note, in case you want to know.
When you're coaching against, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to let you know, to make your head spin, Dabo Swinney made like $9.2 million last year.
Well, yeah, I think he's very important to this Clemson team. And that wasn't to discount Dabo Swinney there. I wasn't trying to, I'm not trying to get any South Carolinians upset at me. I don't need that. I don't know what you guys are plotting up there in quarantine in South Carolina, but I'm not trying to make you mad at me. I can assure you that.
Oh man, $9.2 million is a lot of money, man. That's like almost $1 million above what Saban made last year.
That's tough. Another thing, though, let me say this, and you keep saying they lose to Ohio State every year. Yeah, they lose to Ohio State every year. They lose to an Ohio State team that was coached by Urban Meyer, and then now they're coached by Ryan Day, who's just. I'm not trying to make anybody mad here, especially not former guests, but kind of feeding off of what Urban Meyer, the legacy he left. So,
but I'm just saying,
that's where I'll leave that.
If you're the third highest paid coach in college football, I believe he was paid more than Urban Meyer was in general, and you're going to tell me you're going to go 0, like you can't get one win, bro. Not a single one.
Zach, if the question was, do I think he's overpaid? The answer would have been yes, but the question was, do I think he's on the hot seat? No, I don't think he's on the hot seat.
I think if he goes in and he has another 9-3 season, whatever, 8-4, whatever you want to go with, and he loses to Ohio State and loses the bowl game, I think Michigan makes a financial decision and goes another way. I really do. I don't see.
You are putting entirely too much faith in Michigan right now. The state of Michigan is what was the word you used? In an abysmal state. I'll say that. Shout out to our Michigan fans.
You can't take my GRE word, man. That is solely for my use. I'm copywriting the word abysmal.
Good luck.
No,
Zach. But, yeah.
So honestly, so you think no matter what happens this year, Michigan's riding with Harbaugh?
I think that his name is, as long as his name is Jim Harbaugh, he won't be fired. And I've said this several times during the season. I think if anything, they will push him toward an NFL job. They'll be like, "Hey, there's this opening. Let me hook you up with this." I don't think that they're going to outright fire him.
Okay, well that's still moving on though. Like regardless of how you word it, like
They can move on. I don't think they fire him.
I think that's why I said I think they move on. I think they're just like, you got to do something else, man. Like this, I think they need a new, fresh direction. These expensive trips to Spain to lose the Citrus Bowl is just becoming too much, I think. And, so we'll see how this turns out, throughout the season. But we're going to move on to more looking forward to this next season. So I would say very few experts, except myself, expected LSU to shock the college football world, win the championship, and definitely no one saw Joe Burrow and Joe Brady making this LSU offense one of the most potent in college football history. Each year, there are many surprise teams and players that make all experts, in sports media look stupid and shock everyone with their performance. So we're coming into the month of April pretty soon, which gives us about 6 months until the first kickoff of the season. So this means it's a perfect time to place our bets way too early and look way too far ahead into the future and give our predictions for which team could be the next dark horse to win it all. Brandon, looking ahead, which team is nobody talking about? Which one of these teams would you give the best shot to be the next LSU and come out of nowhere and win the championship?
Okay, first off, here's the disclaimer. Oh no, actually, first off, calling yourself an expert, we're just glad to have your humbleness around here, Zach. We love that. Can't get enough of that. Um, Second off, let me preface this by saying that I am not an expert, and so my choice right here is probably going to get scrutinized. And is it a shot in the dark? Sure. Is
It
it going to
should
be
be.
entertaining? You decide that. That's funny. Um, I just looked up the word scrutinize because I'm sitting here trying to talk and type at the same time. Um, but my dark horse is going to come from the Big Ten Conference, and it's a team that did really well last year. It's a team that's returning their quarterback and their head coach. Um, my team's going to be Michigan, or not Michigan. Sorry, that would have been really funny. Minnesota. I'm going with Minnesota for this upcoming season. I think PJ Fleck's building something really special in Minnesota, and I don't think a lot of people see it. Zach, if you had to rank PJ Fleck in order of Big Ten coaches, are you putting him ahead of Jim Harbaugh right now?
Yes, 1,000%.
Yeah. See, I mean,
Without
he's
second
really a
thought.
guy. I mean, you want to talk about a guy you really like to hear talk. I mean, he's not going to make you laugh by saying that he chugs milk or that he won't eat chicken. But
Row
what
the
he will
boat, though.
do is he will row that boat. He will fire you up. I mean, there were certain times this season that you heard him speak. You heard him talk to his team. Did he fire you up? I'm not a Minnesota fan. I'm not even close to any kind of Big Ten fan. But if I had to choose one that I think is going to shock the world next year, that has the best opportunity to come out of the gate, um, and at plus 8,000 odds right now to win the championship, I think that's a dark horse. They finished at number 10 last season in the AP poll. They're returning Tanner Morgan. I already mentioned that. He has a full year of starting experience now. He had last season. I think he did really well last season. What was it? 30 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. I mean, that's incredible. That's Jameis Winston type touchdowns without Jameis Winston type interceptions right there. Um, yeah, I mean, they started out 9-0 this past season. They ended up what? I mean, I forgot what their final record was this past year. I think they finished 10-2. No, they may have only lost one game. Anyway, I
No,
mean,
11.
they're coming.
It was 11-2.
Yeah, they lost their bowl game though, didn't they?
No, they didn't. You were like all
So
over
they
this dark horse. They lost to Wisconsin for their first game.
people forget.
Yeah, they beat Auburn, if you
Oh,
remember
Zach,
that,
that's cute.
and they lost
Yeah,
to
people
Iowa.
forget. Okay, well, I mean, they're still
It was
coming
the
off a hot
Children's
this past
Hospital
season.
though. It was at the Children's Hospital, so we'll give them a
I'm telling
pass.
you, it's working its magic. Sorry, guys, if I seem all over the place, that's because I am. Well, we're recording this episode at 12:30 in the morning, so here we are. It's been a long day, and quarantine is not doing well for me. Anyway, I think it's a team that's going off a really hot finish this past season. Of course, Zach just mentioned it. Who they beat again in their bowl game, Zach? I just want to hear you
Yeah,
say it.
Yeah, they dominated Auburn,
Yeah,
man. I mean,
Auburn. Was it Auburn? Okay, there we go.
they bullied Auburn, man. It was embarrassing, to be completely honest with you. They won 31-24, but it should have been 31-0, to be completely honest. And I actually
Right.
really like this pick from Brandon because this Minnesota team is going to be loaded again. And, I don't think Michigan's going to be very good. I think Wisconsin's going to take a huge step back in the Big Ten. I think it's going to come down to, I actually think Minnesota, Ohio State are going to be in Indianapolis in December playing for the title.
All right, there you have it. All right, Zach, I want to hear your dark horse now.
All right. So I think this team is scarily similar to LSU this past season. Some experts give them a good
Auburn.
shot. Negative. While others have plenty of doubt. It is an SEC team. And my pick for this segment is the Florida Gators. Yeah, I know some experts are really high on this team, but not many people are giving them a shot to win it all. And I would say a majority of experts and people that give their opinion on this stuff don't even see them winning their division due to Georgia. A lot of people are high on Jamie Newman and this Bulldogs team going into next season. Florida's sitting at about 14-1 odds. The last ones I could find, Westgate Sportsbook, while LSU was about 20-1. So Florida's got a little bit better odds, but they're pretty similar. And
yeah,
so
the last I saw, they were plus 2,500 to win the title.
Yep. So, about the same as LSU was going into last year about this time. But let me tell you why Florida is going to be playing in Miami for the national championship next year. Dan Mullen enters his third full year as the head coach for Florida, which means a lot of his talent are going to be stepping into significant contribution type positions. While Coach O was entering his third full year, he did have the one intern, but I don't really count that because, he didn't get to recruit or do anything. He just kind of had to pick up the mess Les Miles left in the middle of the season. So both entering their third full year. Florida coming off a second straight New Year's Six Bowl a win in a row. LSU also is coming off a New Year's Six win over UCF. I'm sure Brandon was hype about that game.
Great game.
Yeah, so LSU coming in with a second-year starting quarterback in Joe Burrow. Florida coming in with a second-year starting quarterback, Kyle Trask. So these stats are pretty similar. Kyle Trask actually dominated completion percentage with a 67% completion percentage, while Joe Burrow only had a 57% his first year as a starter. They both had around 2,900 yards. Trask had 25 touchdowns to Burrow's 16, but Trask has 7 interceptions to Burrow's 5. Brandon, I would say those are pretty similar, correct?
Yeah, pretty similar.
Yeah, Trask even kind of outperformed Burrow in his first year starting. And the last reason I think is Florida, man, they are returning a lot of talent, but their schedule sets up absolutely perfect for the Gators to make a run here. So their SEC West draw, outside of, their rivalry against LSU, is Ole Miss. That team's going to be rebuilding under Lane Kiffin, and they don't have to play a team like Auburn like they did last year. They don't draw Alabama. Plus, their big draw LSU, they get to play in the swamp. So I think this is a interesting rivalry game because I think home field advantage matters so much in this game because I don't know about you guys. I would not want to have to go play in Death Valley, and I definitely would also not want to have to go play in the swamp. I think the home field advantage matters so much in this rivalry, and getting LSU at home is a huge win here. Then this is their road games outside of Ole Miss. You have Florida State. First-year head coach Mike Norvell, I don't think either of us think they're going to be ready to compete for anything anytime soon. They might not even be bowl eligible come this game. Next, Vandy. I'm just going to say Vandy is Vandy. Can we move on? Does anyone expect Vandy to beat Florida? I mean, honestly, Florida will probably have more fans in the stands than Vandy would. And Tennessee is going to be their toughest road game, but let's be honest here. Brandon, do you see Tennessee beating Florida next season? Because I definitely do not.
No chance.
Yeah, it's just not happening. And then the biggest thing, they get a bye week before playing Georgia. So they get a bye week before they face a young, inexperienced Georgia team, and that can only help matters. You get a week to get healthy. You get a week to game plan. So I think the schedule sets up perfectly for a deep, deep run for this Florida team. They have the talent. They have the experience. They have the coaching. They have the schedule. They're going to make major waves. I think kind of like LSU did. They just kind of had the perfect storm of things come together, and I see Florida having that pretty much that exact same recipe. And the benefit Kyle Trask has is he has a head coach that is probably, I would say, a top 3 play caller in the country, while Joe Burrow had to rely on Joe Brady to come in because Coach O was a defensive-minded coach. So I think that's why you see a little bit of improvement in Trask's stats over Joe Burrow, because he is playing in an offensive-friendly program while Joe Burrow had to do it in a defensive-friendly program. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's all going to come together for them. I think Dan Mullen is ready. I mean, I think we had a whole argument last episode about how I had Dan Mullen above Coach O in terms of the best coaches in college football. Brandon didn't necessarily agree with me, but I think Florida is the team to watch out for going into this next season.
Yeah, and they're definitely a team that they weren't bad last season. I mean, you watch their games. I mean, they played LSU close, and LSU, I mean, look what they did. I mean, they just ran away with the title, basically. So, yeah, it's definitely, that was a team that I had on my radar. I could never admit that. I could never list them as my dark horse to win for obvious reasons, but I can see where you're coming from. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. And, to move on from this, I mean, to preview another big question surrounding 2020, if I told you that a transfer from Ohio State would come down to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and lead the LSU Tigers to a national championship and steal a Heisman Trophy while he was at it, you probably would not believe me. And just to make, the story even better, if I told you he went from just about 57% completion percentage and under 3,000 yards to over 70% completion percentage and almost 5,600 yards, then I would probably be the biggest liar you ever met. But we've seen this story before. Nobody thought Joe Burrow would do this. Nobody saw Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson, or Johnny Manziel coming before the season. So, Brandon, what player in college football could you see being the next Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson or Johnny Manziel and taking the country by storm and winning the Heisman?
Oh, man, what a difficult question. So the way that I was posed to me before this segment was who's going to be the next Joe Burrow? And my answer was simply going to be there's no other Joe Burrow. There's only one Joe Burrow. So, Zach, you take the reins. I'm going to figure this out.
Okay, yeah, so I actually wanted to start this segment by saying there's probably not going to be another Joe Burrow. There'll be a few players who take the country by storm, but none of them is going to be able to replicate what Joe Burrow did last season. So I have 3 picks that could possibly all be dark horse Heisman candidates to surprise many people. It's really impossible just to pick one player here, but all 3 have similarities to Joe Burrow or other quarterbacks, that we've mentioned. And my first pick, probably going to get some pushback. Brandon has talked about this guy before. We've highlighted him a lot of times on this podcast, actually, and that's Ian Book from Notre Dame. It's an unconventional pick, but Book has the raw ability to make waves and make the plays in this upcoming season. So he's coming fresh off a 3,000-yard season where he had 34 touchdowns and only 6 interceptions. And toward the end of the season, he seemed to find his stride, and this momentum could carry into the 2020 season. So he also benefits, kind of like Burrow did, from a new offensive play caller in Tommy Rees, which could give Book more freedom and a refreshing playbook. Burrow and Mayfield benefited from the so-called fresh vision of Joe Brady and Lincoln Riley, and the same could go for Ian Book this season. Brian Kelly is also one of the best offensive minds in college football, and this is the benefit that I talked about earlier that Burrow did not have with Coach O. Book, coming into his senior season, will have a lot to prove, and he also has a huge stage against Clemson in early November to really make that Heisman statement. Notre Dame returns a lot of talent. Notre Dame is going to be a top 10 team, and I think Notre Dame has all the potential to make major, major moves, and it's going to be because of Ian Book.
Yeah, I can, and this is a guy that both of us have, you mentioned this, a few minutes ago, but we both mentioned him this past season. We both really like this kid. That he definitely has his flaws, but I mean, you look at Joe Burrow from 2 seasons ago. I mean, what'd you see? You saw a kid who had 16 touchdowns. And that's, look at his next season. Who would have ever expected that? So Ian Book definitely has the raw talent, like you said. I think that he could really, truly do it this next season. So did you want to go ahead and list your other ones, or did you want me to go ahead?
Yeah. I'll get my second one going so you can get your stuff together.
I've got my stuff, man. Don't worry.
All right, so my second one is Kellen Mond from Texas A&M.
Okay.
So similar to Ian Book, the clock is ticking. Mond's entering his senior year, but the reason I'm so high on this kid is another year in Jimbo Fisher's system should only increase Mond's chances to be this dark horse Heisman candidate. Fisher, long history as one of the best quarterback developers in the country. I mean, you just look at Jameis Winston and see what he did there. His time across the college football landscape is impeccable. This is one of the most highly respected coaches in college football, and the offense started to click late in the season. Yeah, the LSU game wasn't great, but we saw what that LSU defense did to Clemson. We're going to exclude that game. Okay. Mon has the intangibles to be special. He's 6'3", 220, and can run just as fast as any quarterback in the country. He has a powerful arm, can make quick, smart decisions, and is extremely accurate. Mon has the advantage of extreme mobility, which makes him even more dangerous than Baker Mayfield or Joe Burrow. He's more of a Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson type of guy, where his feet actually will probably make him a highlight reel more so than his accuracy or throwing ability that we saw with Joe Burrow. His accuracy when given time in the pocket is up there. I mean, his 62% completion percentage is higher than Joe Burrow's was in Joe Burrow's junior season. Mon has to show his full potential, and combining that with Jimbo Fisher's system, A&M returning the most talent in the SEC in terms of returning players, that makes A&M and Mond very dangerous, and I think Mond is someone you guys need to look out for when the season starts late August.
Yeah. This is a kid who obviously last season didn't put up the greatest numbers. He kind of had, and it really, it was just a slump, really. I was going to say sophomore slump, but it was just a slump. He definitely showed out 2 seasons ago, did very well in the system he was placed in. This past season struggled a little bit more, but he's probably just pros for a comeback at this point. It's not one of those things where he's probably just going to fall deeper and deeper into the slump. No, I think he bounces back. He's that kind of competitor. He's got that kind of head on his shoulders. I think that he's out to show everybody the last season was a fluke, and that he is really a great football player. And I think that Jimbo Fisher's going to be there to back him up on that 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw what he did to Oklahoma State in the Texas Bowl to end the season. It was impressive seeing him tear that defense apart like he did.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, who is your pick before I get my third pick? Because we definitely could have the same person here. I'm not sure, so I'll let you take this one.
That's what I was worried about, and that's why I tried to step in on the last pick. Glad we didn't. I heard the K, and I was like, you know what? He might have it. No, and you guys might make fun of me. Zach, you might make fun of me. Y'all might think it's a joke. It's really not a joke. I'm just high on this kid, and everyone knows it. Keaton Slovis. Let's give a hand. Let's give a hand for him.
He was fourth out of, I picked 5 players just in case. He was fourth on my list, so you're totally good. Take this one away.
Keaton, let's talk about it because we don't talk about it enough. It may have started out as a shtick. It ended up as reality, and I love this kid maybe more than life itself. Last year was his freshman year, of course. He only stepped into the picture because the starting quarterback was hurt. So he played in 12 games this past season. Zach, You might actually know it, but if you had to guess without knowing the stats, what would you say his completion percentage would have been?
Would have been.
Like if you had to
Ooh,
guess, if you had to guess without seeing the actual numbers.
that's 65.
No, man, 72% completion percentage this past
That's
season,
that's pretty. That's
71.9.
pretty good. Pretty
Yeah, you want
good.
to know how good it is? It's the third best in the country. He's behind Joe Burrow, and the second one really confused me. I didn't realize this guy had this kind of percentage. Tyler Huntley from Utah had a
Hey, he was.
73% completion percentage.
Listen, people sleep on Huntley, one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the country. People are like, how is Utah in the top 5 at one time in the rankings? Huntley and Zach Moss were a deadly combination out there in Utah.
Yeah, I mean, and you may want to give some of the credit here from Keaton Slovis to Michael Pittman Jr. from USC. Yeah, he's a great receiver. I'm not going to take that away from him. I think he's a fantastic receiver. I saw him work out at the Senior Bowl before he was, he's obviously he couldn't play because of he didn't pass his physical there, but I saw him work out there. Fantastic. I mean, caught every single ball that was passed to him, and he kind of did that during the season too. But I think that you have to at least be some kind of good quarterback to get that ball to any receiver. So Keaton Slovis, 72% completion percentage. Not only that, but he passed for 3,500 yards this past season, 30 touchdown, 30 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. I think this kid really has a bright future, and I could see him breaking out even more than that, which is crazy. I mean, he did that as a freshman, a true freshman. I think he definitely has a bright career ahead of him. And Zach, I think I know who your third player is going to be, but why don't you go ahead and hit us with it?
Wait, hang on. Hang on. I want you to guess who my third player is.
Sam Howell?
He was my 5th.
Okay.
Okay. This is the one that I told you was going to piss you off. It's going to piss a lot of people off. I don't care. So I'm going to list 2 stat lines. So without going back and listening and without looking it up, I want all our listeners and Brandon to guess which stat is my player from last year and which stat is Joe Burrow from 2018. All right?
Well, I think I know Joe Burrow, so go ahead.
Okay, hang on. We're going to do rushing yards first as a quarterback.
I
313.
might not know this.
Okay. 313 yards and 7 touchdowns. 399 yards and 7 touchdowns. Which one is Joe Burrow from 18?
Ooh, shoot. I didn't realize it was going to be that close. 319.
No. 399 and
Okay.
7 touchdowns was Joe Burrow.
Okay.
Passing stats. Which one's Burrow? Which one's Nix? Brandon's probably going to get this because he memorized this, but other listeners, go ahead. I'll let you guess too. I got 57% completion percentage, 2,500 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. Then I have 57% completion percentage, 2,800 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. Which one was Burrow?
I'm going to go ahead and give it a second, let it breathe so that everyone can guess. And 3, 2, 1. Joe Burrow, I don't know. I mean, you knew I was going to know this. 57.8 completion percentage, Zach, and only 5 interceptions. That was Joe Burrow.
Yes. Do you know who the first one was?
Bo Nix, because you just said it.
Yeah. Bo Nix had all those stats.
You were trying to keep it a secret, but you said you had to guess which one is Burrow and which one is Nix. And I was
That's true.
Well,
That's true. So I tried not to be biased here. I didn't make him my number 1, but I had to list this out because the stats are eerily similar. I mean, even Brandon can say the fact that they're less than 100 yards off in rushing, they're only about 200 yards off in passing yards. They had the same number of touchdowns. Nix threw 1 more interception, and they had the exact same completion percentage. That's pretty. That's pretty scary. It makes absolutely no sense how it was this similar. And they have very similar playing styles and physical abilities. Their attitudes and confidence are eerily similar as well. I mean, I don't think Nix or Burrow sees sees a pass or a hole in the covers that they don't think they can make the throw. And the reason Nix is on this list for me isn't because of these eerily similar stats. It's because Gus Malzahn has officially handed the keys to the offense to somebody else. And that person is Chad Morris, one of the best offensive coordinators in the country. He was the offensive coordinator who developed Taj Boyd and Deshaun Watson at Clemson. He has a very a more pass-friendly offensive playbook than Gus Malzahn had. He's going to let Nix go back there and air the ball out. And this is similar to, Coach O bringing in Joe Brady to reinvent the passing offense. Steve Emzinger, great offensive coordinator, but Joe Brady really reinvigorated that offensive playbook, and I think we can both agree on that. The difference is Nix is a bit younger. He's a little bit shorter than Burrow was, but they have similar intangibles. And the biggest thing for Nix is Burrow played behind one of the most experienced offensive lines in the country. They ended up winning the Best Offensive Line Award for college football. The offensive line development for Nix is going to be huge. They have to replace 4 starters on this Auburn offensive line. If that comes together and he picks up Chad Morris's offense like Burrow did Joe Brady's offense, I think Nix could be the one to take the next step. Because if you didn't know Joe Burrow's stats, you probably didn't know which one was Burrow and which one was Nix, even though I talked about Burrow's stats to start this episode.
Right. No, I mean, they're very similar. I mean, I can still disagree with you on how similar you think their attitudes are, but yeah, I'll say those 2 stat lines were off. I mean, it's indisputable. I mean, they're very similar.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, the fact that, people also got to remember that Nix was just a true freshman last year. So he still has at least 2 more years at Auburn to go to. I just thought you had to include someone who had such perfect similarity in stats in this conversation if we were going to have it. But I'm still going with Book or Mond over Nix. But I thought that had to be mentioned. And, so we'll move on. Last segment of the day. The offseason in college football filled with recruiting drama, coaching changes, and now the great transfer portal or the ugly toilet portal if you're from Pitt. We've seen players such as Jamie Newman land in Athens, De'Aaron King and Quincy Roche take their talents to Miami. But there was one big name to announce this past weekend, and that was Trey Sermon. He announced his intentions to leave Oklahoma on March 14th and took just over a week to decide to take his talents to Columbus and join the Ohio State Buckeyes. Sermon has been known for his explosive playmaking abilities in Norman, but injuries ended this past season early. J.K. Dobbins is headed to the NFL draft, and Ohio State's top replacement, Master Teague, tore his Achilles in a practice this offseason, which left the Buckeyes with a very, very thin running back room and plenty of opportunity for someone to contribute. Brandon, how big is Sermon's decision to go to Ohio State, and does this decision to head to Columbus shake up the predictions for next season and make Ohio State the best bet to win the national championship?
Man, I mean, it's huge, right? I mean, I think it's a huge decision. Obviously, one of the best. I mean, I'm not going to say one of the best. A very great running back in college football, leaving a Big 12 program, Oklahoma, to go to a Big 10 program at Ohio State, a team that's already a contender, a team that just lost J.K. Dobbins to the NFL draft, and a team that is returning players like Justin Fields to run their offense. And now they've also got Trey Sermon in their offense. I mean, obviously, he's a guy who puts up nearly 1,000 yards rushing, at least in 2018, put up 947 yards. This past season, 744, only 5 touchdowns. But I mean, I believe was he hurt for part of his last season?
Yeah. He tore his knee and ankle injuries. He was out after I think 10 games this past season.
Yeah. So I mean, that's without 3 games in there. I mean, he rushed for 744 yards. Obviously the touchdown number isn't quite where you'd want it at, but he's also playing in the same backfield as Jalen Hurts. You know, a guy that's also going to demand. He's also going to command the football. He's going to rush the ball at will. So, I mean, he was playing quarterback, but he's also, I mean, sort of operating as a running back in a sense. So, you know, essentially, Trey Sermon is what he was sharing touches this past season with his quarterback. I think that he's going to be a big key to Ohio State this past year. Do I think this makes them the odds-on favorite to win? No, not by any stretch of the imagination, and here's why. Because if you had to put Trey Sermon and J.K. Dobbins up head-to-head, who do you say wins? I mean, I say J.K. Dobbins wins 9 times out of 10. I think he's a much better running back. And I don't think that this Ohio State team was a running back away from winning the national championship this past year anyway. I mean, obviously it came down to, you know, the last minute in the college football semifinals to a Clemson team that, you know, honestly, you put Trey Sermon in there instead of J.K. Dobbins. Do I think they win? No. Obviously, I mean, you take away a couple key players from Ohio State like Chase Young. Does Ohio State win? No, they just lost those players. I mean, but then you have to take away players from Clemson. Obviously, take away Isaiah Simmons, take away everybody that's going to the drafts. But at the end of the day, you're still seeing Trevor Lawrence in that Clemson backfield. You're still seeing Travis Etienne in that Clemson backfield because they're coming back. I don't think that adding this one piece is going to do it for Ohio State this year. But I don't really know what piece you could add that would do it for Ohio State this year, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're on the same page with this one. I think, I think I'll start out by saying this was probably the most needed pickup in terms of national championship contenders this all season. Ohio State had a clear weakness after Dobbins' departure, and then T got injured in, you know, spring football. And I think Fields, as good as he is, he needs the ability to have a strong running back that he can rely on to keep defenses honest in their coverage and their schemes. I think if you took the running game away from Fields, that offense would become very, very one-dimensional and easy to stop. This is a wild card thing, and it's hard to project this because Sermon was very inconsistent at Oklahoma. He's shown major explosiveness, over 7 yards a carry last season, and has averaged over 6.5 yards per touch in his 3 seasons between the receiving and running game. But his injuries and consistency have been huge issues throughout his time as a Sooner, and he never seemed to really carve out his role. He always was stuck behind another running back in the backfield or another weapon elsewhere on the field. Yeah, you can contribute that to the offense that he was in, or having Jalen Hurts, having Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield, CeeDee Lamb, you know, D.D. Westbrook, whoever you want to say. Yeah, all those players are there, but if you're going to say that you're going to be the best running back wherever, you're going to have to step up and find your role, get some playing time. And I think if Sermon reaches his potential, then Ohio State is neck and neck with Clemson as the odds-on favorite for the national title. But if these old demons arise, then Ohio State can find themselves in serious trouble trying to get through a tough Big Ten this next year, and definitely find themselves in deep, deep trouble in the national semifinals or the championship if they find themselves there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't really have anything to add to that. I think that was pretty much spot on, exactly what I was thinking.
So, yeah, I think one of the big things people forget to look at is carries. They look at yards, they look at touchdowns, they look at yards per carry, yards average, whatever. But J.K. Dobbins had over 300 carries last season. Sermon's only at 339 his whole career in college. So can he be an every down back like J.K. Dobbins was, like Jonathan Taylor was for Wisconsin, DeAndre Swift for Georgia, you know, Clyde Edwards-Helaire for LSU? Can he be that every down back? And I got questions about that. It's weird because Sermon is bigger. He's 6 foot 220. Dobbins was more 5'10", 215 or so. So Sermon's built to take the beating, but can he carve out his role in this talented Ohio State offense? Because you say that he might got caught behind Jalen Hurts or whoever, but there's going to be talent all over the place. I mean, we had, Paul tell us last week that, Chris Olave is going to be there. He's the X factor for Ohio State next year. You have Justin Fields. I mean, there's talent everywhere on this Ohio State team. So it's up to Trey Sermon not to get swept under the rug in a very, very busy, talented offense in Ohio State. But if everything comes together, Sermon could be sitting on a chair in New York for the Heisman if everything goes right, to be completely honest with you, because I think he has that type of talent.
Yeah, he has a very high ceiling. Like I said, I mean, I think he's an incredible running back. Obviously, the injury is going to be a concern for this upcoming season, but I think that he definitely has the talent that he needs to get that sort of deal done.
Yeah, completely agree. But, guys, the thing about way too early predictions, no one really knows. We'll see. It's going to be interesting to see how he fits in that offense. But for right now, that is a wrap on this episode. We're going to be back later this week with even more college football content for you guys. So follow us on social media, Instagram at _Blue Bloods, Facebook at the Blue Bloods Pod, Twitter at the __ Blue Bloods. Right now we're running brackets for you guys. March Madness got canceled, so we said, no, let's make some college football brackets. Right now we're doing the greatest college football teams of all time. Voting goes on in our Instagram story handle. I just gave you guys Facebook polls, gave you guys that too. Twitter, posting them straight on there. So yeah, go vote for that. Make your voices heard. We're doing a few votes a day. We're trying to spread this out for you guys, give y'all endless content. After the greatest teams of all time, we have the greatest coaches of all times, the greatest players of all time. It's all coming, the greatest games of all time as well. We'll wrap that up. So we have plenty of content, stuff to get you guys interacting with the podcast. But you can find us everywhere. We're now available on iHeartRadio. So I guess if you were waiting on that, you can find us on there now. Everywhere else, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor, wherever you want to listen. We're there, Spotify. But for right now, guys, we out.